In my 39th year, I was taken to the ER with my first heart attack, and that was a shock. That was a huge shock. I didn't see that coming. And when I was in the ER that first time, I was also diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. And I didn't know what to do, what direction to turn. All I knew was to do what I was told to do. Do the exercises, do the diet, take the medications, do the stuff. The problem is the stuff wasn't making me better.
Welcome to Thriving with Diabetes, the podcast where we empower people with type 2 diabetes to live their best lives. I am your host, Gamden, a holistic wellness coach. I help people overcome the struggles they face with type 2 diabetes. I believe that with the correct knowledge, mindset, and support, you can manage your health condition effectively and live a fulfilling life. Today, we have an inspiring guest with us today. Belldon, the founder of Nutritional Fitness. Belldon's journey is nothing short of remarkable, from facing 3 heart attacks and a diagnosis of type 2 diabetes at the age of 39 to successfully reversing both conditions and reclaiming his health. In this episode, we will dive deep into Belldon's health journey, exploring the challenges he faced and the transformative steps he took to reverse diabetes. We will also discuss some sustainable lifestyle changes for better health. Belldon will also share insights from his book, New Rules of Diabetes, providing valuable information for achieving optimal health. It is always inspiring to learn about our guests' perspectives and experiences. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Belldon to share his mission or health journey. Belldon, welcome to Thriving with Diabetes podcast.
Thank you, Gamden. I appreciate you having me, and I appreciate the work you do. It's inspiring to me also to talk with people on this journey of helping people to live life with diabetes. My journey was shocking to me at the time. My first 25 years, I was in home building, custom home building, and I was living that life of a home builder. All the deals that we make are cut around the taco truck, and all of the conversations about what's going to happen the next day are around beer 30. And I didn't think much of it. I was gaining weight. I was getting more and more fatigued, but I was also getting closer to 40. And that's how life's supposed to be, right? You get older, you start to hurt, you get more tired, things don't work right. At least that's what I thought. In my 39th year, I was taken to the ER with my first heart attack, and that was a shock. That was a huge shock. I didn't see that coming. And when I was in the ER that first time, I was also diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. And I remember going home after that trip. I lived, thankfully, but I got home and I was just sitting there staring into my cup of coffee and looking at that black pool, and it just reminded me of how I felt. I felt like I was in this black abyss of life. And I didn't know what to do, what direction to turn. All I knew was to do what I was told to do. Do the exercises, do the diet, take the medications, do the stuff. The problem is the stuff wasn't making me better. I had 2 more heart attacks before I was 41 years old. And while my diabetes numbers were stabilized, I wasn't getting better. I definitely wasn't feeling better. And everything I did, I just seemed to be sucked farther and farther and farther down this abyss. And I reached a point where I really was at the bottom, at the very lowest I've ever been in my life. And the only thing I could think at that point in time was if I could figure out how cells worked, maybe there was a way to work with them. And that thought got into my mind and it stuck there. And I just started running down every rabbit hole of learning that was available to me and learning how the body works, how cells work. And in a very short period of time, I started changing how I was eating, changing how I was doing things, and most of all, changing how I was thinking. And as I started to change these things, I started to feel better. I started to get my energy back. And in a 2 year period of time, a very short period of time, my type 2 diabetes was gone. My numbers were stabilized. My heart disease, I was taken off my last medication for heart disease. I was on 18 at one point in time. I was taken off my last medication almost 2 years to the day from my diagnosis. I'd lost 105 pounds and gained energy that I didn't even know was possible. Energy like I was a kid again. That was 18 years ago, a little more than 18 years ago. And from that point until today, I've remained disease free. I'm doing things and living a life pushing 60. I'll be 60 here in just a few months. I'm living a life I couldn't have dreamed of living at 39 and able to help so many other people through this journey as well. And it's really been a remarkable path, and I'm so grateful for the way it's worked out.
Very interesting. It's really a remarkable story. How you went through the struggles and you tried different things to overcome either heart issues and diabetes. What is very interesting is that the biggest action that you took is you learned how the body works. Then after that, you started implementing things which helped you overcome or reverse diabetes and at the same time improve heart health. Is that correct?
That's the story.
Brilliant. Very interesting. But there is something I want to ask about. People often confuse with reversing diabetes and achieving diabetes remission. And they might have a sort of argument. I have experienced that myself. So people or some people don't accept the idea of reversing diabetes. Can you touch on this important topic or idea so people can know that it is possible at least to achieve diabetes remission? And maybe you can explain what is diabetes remission and reversing diabetes.
Absolutely. And I've actually coined a new word for this to help alleviate some of the confusion. The idea of remission is that if you get rid of diabetes, it can come back. And that's true. If you do the things to your body that brought you diabetes in the first place, it will definitely bring diabetes back. But you can also live a life without any of the effects of diabetes. You can have remission last forever if you do the right things, think the right way, and put the right things into your body. So it comes down to a matter of semantics. If remission lasts forever, have you really reversed diabetes? Or is it just in remission forever? And it's semantics. The important thing to know is that you can live diabetes free for the rest of your life. And so I've coined a new term, and it's the title of my book, Undo Type 2, The New Rules of Diabetes. And I use undo type 2 because this is really what the goal is. The goal is to have it not affect your life anymore. And whatever we want to call that, we do have the understanding that diabetes can come back again if we do the things to our body that cause it. But you can live diabetes free. And that's the important thing to know and to grasp and to cling to, because that gives you the hope. That gives you the understanding of what life can hold out for you. And you can remove the sense of fear that comes with the idea of remission and, oh my gosh, it's going to come back. You can remove that idea and you can remove it successfully.
Brilliant. Very interesting. And you mentioned, let's see, let me rephrase it. You are saying, it's like you are saying, term is not matter. What is matter is you get rid of diabetes, and you came with a term, undo diabetes, which means you go back to the normal stage without diabetes. But here is the key: if you reverse or achieve diabetes remission, and you did the same thing that put you in the same issue or cause the health condition, so you will go back to the old habit. Is that correct?
Absolutely. If you go back to the old habits, you're going to go to the same place. And this is something that we need to change in our mindset about health in general. We're in this diet culture where people turn diets on and off constantly. I turn the diet on, I lose weight. I turn the diet off. Guess what happens? The weight comes back because I start doing the same things that put the weight there in the first place. And we tend to think about health in general that way. And one of the chief areas of mindset is understanding that there are things that don't belong in our body. They are in our food supply, but they don't belong in a body. They never have. And if we can achieve the mindset that things that don't belong in our body don't get put there, we have the opportunity to live a healthy life indefinitely. And one thing I would add to that, and I can only speak for myself here, it doesn't matter for me what the words on my chart are. What matters to me is that I wake up every morning and I get out of bed pain-free. I immediately have energy that lasts all day. I don't crash in the middle of the afternoon. I have the strength to do the things that I want to do, and there's nothing in my body tearing me apart. That's what matters to me. What it's called on my chart is completely irrelevant. The life I get to lead is the important part.
Brilliant. Very interesting information. Thank you for sharing that. You have mentioned about that you learned how the body works. And let's move to the next point, which is about food. And you know that nutrition plays a crucial role in healing our bodies. Could you share some food recommendations or tips that have powerful healing properties, specifically for people managing diabetes or trying to improve their health condition?
Absolutely. Absolutely. One thing I had to learn about food early on is not what's in food. That came second. What I had to learn first is how a body works. And we spend a lot of time in the world of diet and food talking about individual food sources. Take this food, it's going to help you. Eat cinnamon, it's going to make your diabetes go away, right? Don't eat this, do eat this. And that's just not how the body works. When you look at chemistry, and we are chemistry, everything happening inside of here is a series of chemical reactions and responses. And as complicated as it can seem, chemistry really comes down to just three things. We have to put the right things in the beaker to get the reaction that we want. And that's not any single item. That's a recipe that goes into that beaker to get the reaction that we want. We have to keep the wrong things out of the beaker because it pollutes that reaction. It might even give us reactions we didn't want and didn't plan for. And then the third magic part of any recipe is we have to get the balance right. If you imagine baking a cake and you put all the right ingredients in and you keep all the wrong ingredients out, but you put in 2.5 cups of salt and a teaspoon of sugar, what kind of cake are we going to have, right? The balance matters. The recipe matters. And this is how our body works. We need to put the right combination of things in. We need to keep the wrong things out, and we need to get the foods that belong there in the right balance. If we do those three things, food proves to be the only thing that can heal the body. Lots of things can take away the pain, manage disease, help us over the rough spots. I'm very grateful to modern medicine because it kept me alive long enough to learn what to do to heal my body. But in the end, food is the only thing that can heal your body. So I early on wondered how to make this into a simple recipe that people could use without having to understand all the complexities of chemistry and what's going in the body and looking and analyzing foods. And I put food into 4 groups. I call them the 4 jars just for simplicity. And if you eat from these 4 groups every single day, your body is going to have what it needs to do what it does best and heal you. And those 4 groups are high quality proteins. And what I mean by high quality proteins, we have a tendency in scientific studies even to take all meats and lump them together as an example. That means the processed meats full of additives are put into the same bucket as whole meats that don't have any additives at all in our study results that we're reading. When I say high quality proteins, we need to take processed foods out of the mix. High quality proteins are whole foods, whether they're plant or animal. They're whole foods that haven't been factory processed. The second jar is high quality carbohydrates, and it's the same thing. I don't look at carbohydrates in terms of simple and complex. That was actually an idea thought up in 1973 on the floor of Congress for a farm bill. It has very little to do with health. What we need to think about is factory processed and unprocessed whole foods. Stick with whole carbohydrates, not factory processed. And then the other 2 jars are leafy green vegetables. 85% of the building blocks your body needs are in those plants. We can't ignore them. And fibrous vegetables, the stuff that if you chew it up, it leaves strings in your mouth. And these overwhelmingly are responsible for a healthy gut biome, keeping us clean, keeping things working properly so that our digestion gets everything else where it needs to go. And if you eat from these 4 jars every day, you're getting the right things in, the first element of chemistry. If you avoid anything that can't exist without a factory, and there's a lot of definitions out there for processed food, and some have argued with me and said, well, as soon as you melt butter, you've processed food. Well, let's not be stupid, right? Factory processed food. We probably can all agree that if a food cannot exist without a factory, it doesn't belong in a body. If it cannot exist without a factory, it doesn't belong in the body. So let's just keep that out. And if we do that, we're keeping the right things out of the beaker. And then it's just a matter of understanding where you fall in the balance of things so that you can get the balance of the recipe right. For most people, that's a high volume of leafy greens, a moderate volume of proteins and carbohydrates, and fibrous vegetables at least twice a day. And that's what's brought me to where I am today. And I've been able to overcome the diseases. I've been able to become medication free and live the life I live today just by letting food do its job.
Very interesting. If people can get only this part from this episode, is more than enough. Very interesting information. The way to look at nutrition is different. And you mentioned 3 pillars or concept we have, or rules. We have to look at it from different perspectives. Number 1, eat the right food. Remove or keep away from the wrong food. And the third one, balance. Then we build our diet, or we fix our diet with four food groups: high quality proteins, whole carbohydrates is not just the refined or processed carbohydrates. At the same time, we have to just control only the amount. And the third one, you mentioned leafy green vegetables. And the fourth one, I think I missed number 4. I think you mentioned fiber. Is that correct?
Fibrous, yeah. Fibrous vegetables, the ones that leave strings in your mouth when you chew
Brilliant.
them. And think of those like your body's rotor-rooter. Those fibers don't digest very well. And that's why they're so important to eat, because they keep their form and they go through your body and they clean you out. And that's the important part of them. So the ones here, we're thinking broccoli, string beans, snap peas, these kinds of foods.
Brilliant. Very interesting. Thank you for sharing these great insights about nutrition, how to look at it. And great that you mentioned we need to learn how the body works, so to understand what we do. Is like giving someone a recipe, but we don't know about what we are making. It's going to be difficult to make it. Now we learned things about our body, or how it works, about nutrition, about diabetes and diabetes remission. Many people find it challenging to make sustainable lifestyle changes, which is key when it comes to health or diabetes. What tips do you recommend for people looking to adopt healthier habits that can maintain in the long term?
We need to turn upstairs for this one. We need to be thinking about how we think more than what we do. There's a big push out there for everybody to become a gym rat. No matter what your lifestyle is, you can't be healthy if you're not a gym rat. And so people go and beat themselves up at the gym unsuccessfully, just like they beat themselves up in diet unsuccessfully, because we haven't done what we need to do up here. And this is one of the first things I work with people on, because way back in the beginning for me, when I was wondering what to do and I didn't know where to put my foot, I remember how helpless I felt, how much of a struggle it was not knowing where to turn. But I did know one thing, and I knew this beyond any shadow of a doubt. I knew that I ate my way there. I knew that the things that I was putting in my body got me to that point of disease. And so I took an opportunity, or I tried to take an opportunity, right there when my life was on the line and I had the biggest why a person could ever have. I don't want to die. And therefore, I'm going to stop eating that food. And I made a decision to stop eating that food in that moment of time. The crazy thing is, though, by the end of the night, I had eaten that food anyway. There was so much in me psychologically driving me to that place. And so when I went to bed that night, I cried myself to sleep, and I felt completely defeated. And I'm willing to bet there's a lot of people listening to this right now that understand what that defeated feeling feels like. And when you're feeling that defeated, the question in your mind is, why should I even try? I can't. I try and I fail. I can't. And what I did in the first several months was start to think of my future differently. We tend to think of our why as, I want to be here for my grandkids, or I want to see my daughter get married, or I want to build my company to this certain point. And those whys are never enough. They're not. We try it and we fail. They're never enough. So I started thinking instead of, how do I want to experience my life? Not what do I want to do, but how do I want to experience what I do? And it started giving me an entirely different perspective. I want to travel. Okay. How do I want to experience that travel? Do I want to be so uncomfortable on that 16-hour flight to Asia that it's just miserable? Do I want to be so large that I can't even put my food tray down into my lap? It's going to set at an angle and I'm going to uncomfortably try to eat because of my size. Do I want to get where I'm going and have to say no to the amazing opportunities there because I don't have the energy to get out of bed in the morning, or because I don't have the mobility to do it and I know I'm going to hold everybody else back? Is that how I want to experience travel? Or do I want to experience travel jumping in that plane, being able to sleep because I've even got a little extra space in my seat? I'm a big guy. I'm 6 feet tall. I'm muscly enough. I'm not a bodybuilder, but I take up space. Do I want to have a little extra room to even be able to sleep? Yeah, I do. Do I want to get where I'm going with so much energy and so much mobility and being pain free that I can say yes to those opportunities and 100% enjoy them? I even put the thought in my head of Santorini, Greece. Santorini's on a bunch of bucket lists. It's also a city built on a hillside, and they have tiny little streets with itty bitty cars. If you want to get around Santorini, you're going to be walking up and down these inclines, or you're going to have to fit in a tiny little car. Can I go to Santorini and enjoy my time the way I am? And the answer to those questions then was no. I cannot experience my life in any way the way I want to experience it. I can't even show up for my grandkids and play. I'm going to be the one sitting in the bench watching them play, wishing I could play. They're going to come and say, come play with me. And I'm going to say, no, I'm sorry, I can't. Or do I want to be the parent that's running through the tubes with them? And when I started to think this way, and this is the first exercise I run every new client through, when I start thinking this way, my why changes. Because now I can say, I know how I want to experience my life. Does this food serve that purpose? Because when we're saying, do I really want that food? The answer is going to be yes every time. Of course I want it. I wouldn't ask the question if I didn't want it. But now I can ask a different question. I know how I want to experience my life. Does this food serve that purpose? And right away, both voices in my head said, absolutely not. You cannot eat that food. It won't get you where you want to be. That alone changed everything for me.
Brilliant. Very interesting. The way you look at things is different. Even you tried multiple times to stop or to control eating at when you decided not to eat. You tried, but even you failed multiple times, but you never gave up, which is a very good action to take. The second thing is we need to ask when we struggle with food or with a health condition or a cause factor that lead to the situation we are in. So you said what you look at what you are doing. If that helps the goal or the destination you are heading towards, then you do it. If it doesn't, then you need to stop.
And isn't that true of everything in life? Does where I want to live get me closer to my career path or further away from it? Everything in life we think about this way. We just need to extend it to our food. Does it get me closer to where I want to be or further away? And it becomes such an easier decision.
Brilliant. Very interesting. So we can apply this concept to anything in life and health. We have talked about healthy lifestyle changes, but when you want or people want to move to the next step, always they will have obstacles. So obstacles such as emotional eating, which you already mentioned, lack of motivation. How can people, specifically those who are struggling with a health condition like type 2 diabetes, maybe cancer, heart disease, how can they overcome obstacles?
Yeah, I think a big part of this is looking your obstacle in the face, calling it by name and dealing with it. How many times do we have an obstacle, let's say emotional eating, and we don't see a way to address it, so instead we start going and working out at the gym? Well, the gym might be great, but it doesn't help you with the problem. And we tend to do this over and over and over again. We start doing something that we feel we can do, even though it has nothing to do with the problem that we're trying to overcome. So the first thing we need to understand is if we have emotional eating, if we're doing that, we need to address why. Why have we made the connection between food and our negative emotions? Chances are you didn't make that connection yourself. Food companies are masters at creating that connection between negative emotions and their products. But we need to recognize it, we need to address it for what it is and focus there. If we're having a lack of motivation, we can't just simply shift to something that we're more motivated to do and say it's going to solve the problem. We have to create motivation for the thing that we need to do. And creating motivation is what we just talked about. As soon as you know and you really think about, and we don't think about this enough, by the way, we don't think about how we want to experience our life. We don't. But the more you consider, how do I want to experience washing dishes? Do I want my back to hurt so bad I have to go crash on the couch every time I wash dishes? Or do I want to dance when I wash dishes like I used to do? Right? So the big things and the little things, the more we think about how we want to experience our life, the more motivated we become to experience that because it's top of our mind. It's the iPhone trick, right? If you want that iPhone and that's all you're thinking about, I promise you, you're going to get that iPhone. If you know how you want to experience your life such that that's all you're thinking about, I promise you, you're going to be motivated to do it. But we have to address motivation as motivation. Overwhelm. If we're feeling overwhelmed, we can't turn our back on that and go do something else. We need to address overwhelm. So the first step is understanding what our challenge is, what our roadblock is, and let's focus on that roadblock and fix it instead of trying to fix something else that doesn't relate to it. That's probably going to require that you get some help because those roadblocks can be very challenging when we're looking at them through our own eyes. Looking at them through somebody else's eyes, they look much smaller. And that person can help us to address them in a more positive way. But definitely don't look the other direction. Looking the other direction has never helped anybody reach any goal.
Brilliant, very interesting. So the key or the takeaways of this part is we need to address the issue or the obstacles that we are facing. The second thing is we need to focus on the solution which is related to the issue to overcome that issue or obstacles, which is very important. But let's say we decided to implement a healthy lifestyle. We identified the issue and we started working on it. So we are on the right path. We are making progress. The question is, how can people stay motivated and committed to their health goals? Especially when they face difficulty, because it's like going up and down, going up and down. So how they can stay committed to their health goals?
we get in touch with our inner toddler. And what I mean by that is I watched a toddler at my house kind of trying to get the remote control when he saw me use it. And this was a child who was trying to walk but couldn't yet. But he pulled himself up on the couch and he took a step towards the table with the remote control and fell. But while he was falling, the most remarkable thing was that his eyes, even while he was falling, his eyes never left that remote control. Never. And he struggled to stand up and he took another step and he fell. And he struggled to stand up and he took another step and he fell. But the thing is, even though he fell about a dozen times, after a dozen falls, he was at the table with the remote control. And he stood up and he grabbed it, put it in his mouth. I felt really bad after all that work that I had to take it away so he wouldn't chew on it. But the thing to learn from that, and the thing that just really struck me, is somewhere along the way, we change our language. When we're a child, we fall. Somewhere along the way, we change that language to fail. That child never went back to start over, not once. Every time he got up and took another step in the right direction. But as soon as we change our language to fail, with that comes the idea that every time we fail, we have to start over. So we're caught in this endless loop at the beginning of the process, and we never break out of it to get through the process. We need to channel that inner toddler. We're going to fall. We're going to fall a lot because that's part of learning a new thing. And it's okay to fall. You just stand up and you realize that the step you took isn't important. The only one that's important is the next one that you take. And as soon as we get back in touch with that way of thinking, I didn't fail, I fell. And I don't have to go start over again. I still have my eyes on what I want, and I'm going to take another step that direction. That childlike thinking is what gets us through the process successfully.
Brilliant. Very interesting. Thank you for sharing that. We have come to a very interesting part, which is about your book. I know you have written the book called New Rules of Diabetes. Could you give us an overview of what readers can expect to find in the book and what inspired you to write it?
Absolutely, absolutely. So the book is actually called Undo Type 2, The New Rules of Diabetes. It'll be coming out early summer. And this book walks you through type 2. What is it? Why does it happen? How does it happen? It grabs onto much of the new science that we see coming out. 2023 was a remarkable year in science because one by one, studies were done on non-sugar sweeteners. And as these studies were done, we were finding out the deleterious effects, including that these things we've been told to eat to help our diabetes, in many cases actually help cause type 2 and cause it to exacerbate as we go along. And these are the things we've been told for 20, 30, 40 years that we're supposed to be eating. And so the new science is in this book. This is why it's called The New Rules of Diabetes. And how does type 2 happen? Because if you know how diabetes happens, it's easier to take the steps to counter it. But we have to take the mystery out. Once we know how diabetes happens, what do? And the book walks through the three most important steps. The first is getting the food right. The second is getting our motivation bulletproof. And we go into the process that we talked a little bit here. We go through this into the book. Chapter 8 is grab a pencil. We have the places to write this in as you go and you do the work to create this kind of motivation in your life. It's a very, very powerful chapter of the book. And then we go into the psychological aspects of making it stick and making it happen. And in this book, we break down exactly what the chemistry of the body needs to be, not in terms of what's happening, here's all the science, let's glaze your eyes over, but not that. But in terms of how do we break up the 4 jars? Why do the 4 jars work? How do you balance the 4 jars for your body? We walk through this in the book so you know exactly how to do it. And then we help you with the psychological aspects as well. So the 1, 2, 3 are there. What causes it? What do we do about it? How do we get our brain right so that we can sustain it? What motivated me to do this book is mostly that last part. The fact that it's so hard for people to do, and no matter how many times people try, they're not successful in it and they give up. That's so disheartening. You do that enough times, you stop trying. And I wanted people to have a path, not only to understand how to get the diet right, but to understand how to get the mind and the spirit right so that we can do this thing. And that was a motivation to the book. And I really, really hope that people find it effective on all three of those areas. Because if you don't get body, mind, and spirit in alignment, you're not going to get the outcome you want. We have to be in that frame of mind.
Brilliant. Very interesting. The book sounds to be a good companion for people with type 2 diabetes. It will take them through the whole process and the steps that they need to take as well. From your book, New Rules of Diabetes, what are three key highlights that you believe are valuable for readers? Just if you can give them three highlights.
Most important is believe that it can be done. Believe that it can be done. And that belief is taken away in so many ways in the world we live in and all the different ideas that we hear. But believe it can be done. Thousands of people have already done it. I don't know, maybe millions. There are so many people who have already put this disease in the rearview mirror. Believe that it can be done. Number two, believe that you can do it. Because it does no good to believe it can be done if you believe you're going to fail. And when we walk through chapters 8, 9, and 10 of this book, this is what we're trying to help you to do, is create the understanding, the belief that you can do it. And number three is believe that you're not alone. When I interviewed people for this book, it blew my mind. This is the fastest growing disease in the world. Type 2 diabetes is the fastest growing disease in the world. And people who get it feel like they're alone. And the more I heard that, the more I began to understand. People don't realize you have groups of people who can support you and help you. You have people who are where you want to be that can help you to get there. And you have people that can help you through the job. So believe that there is help and there is support. If you can master those two things, you'll go down this road and you'll be successful.
Brilliant. Very interesting. Three highlights from your book. Believe it can be done. Believe you can do it. And believe you are not alone. Very interesting. Thank you for sharing that. Now, can you share three key takeaways or lessons that you hope the readers will take on and apply to their health?
Yeah, I think one, and this is eventually where every conversation about diabetes goes, it comes back to the food. And the food is so hard. The food is not hard. The food isn't easy. You put this into your body, that happens. You put this other thing into your body, this happens. It's not difficult. We need to shift our thinking. The food is easy. The way we think about food is hard. I saw a meme one time that said, "Change takes time," he said, and she laughed. Change is instant, but sometimes it takes time to realize that. And if you look back on your life, every change you've ever made happened the second you made the decision to do it. What takes the time is battling the inner voices in your head to allow yourself to make that decision. How many times have you been to that point where I'm going to do this thing, and that dark voice holds you back? It won't let you make that commitment. We have to get management of those voices. We have to know what they are. We have to get them speaking in a way that helps us, right? We do that. We find out that the food is easy. So let's put the challenge where the challenge belongs. Let's not say the diet is hard. It's not. The voices in our head is hard, so let's work on the voices on our head. That's the number one piece of advice I can offer anybody in any stage of trying to get well, is do the work where the work needs to be done and stop doing work where you're already okay.
Brilliant. Very interesting. Thank you for sharing that information about your book and the information people can start implementing when or the actions that they can implement when they start learning about the steps or the actions that you shared in your book. I know the book needs an episode alone. This is something we can discuss it.
It comes from an angle that has never been attacked before. It's not just go do this diet. The whole premise of it is from a level of depth I've never seen in a book before, and I feel it's important to get it out there.
Brilliant. Thank you for sharing the information. I have got another question before we finish this episode. What inspiring message or advice would you like to leave with our audience, specifically those struggling with diabetes or other health conditions?
Yeah. Don't be the one who thinks it's impossible. Don't, because then you won't try. Just don't be that person. When you go to the doctor and the doctor says it can't be beat, it can be put into remission, but it can't be beat, say, okay, I'm going to put it into remission and I'm going to keep it there. Be the person who believes and keeps your spirits positive. I believe that the number one reason that people backslide, the number one reason that people quit, is the lack of belief that they can do it. The lack of understanding of what it is and that they can do it. Don't be that person. Stick with it. Be dogged. Dig, just like if you wanted that iPhone, you're going to find a way to do it. Be that person with your disease, because you do not have to live the rest of your days in misery.
Brilliant. Thank you for sharing your great, inspiring message. How can people find you if they want to learn about you or get in touch?
Actually, last week I made this very easy. My favorite definition of common sense comes from a businessman named C.E. Stowe. He said, common sense is the knack of seeing things as they are and doing things as they ought to be done. I think everybody tries to do things as they ought to be done, but very few people actually see things as they are. You can find me at seeitasitis.com. And seeitasitis.com will show you everything from how to get on the priority list for my upcoming book. And if you're on the priority list, I'm going to be sending you for free chapters. I'm going to give you a chance to look at things in advance, get sneak peeks, a lot of fun things that we're doing there, all the way to being able to get help with the spirit and the mind part of this equation and start getting that going so that everything else begins to flow and begins to work. So seeitasitis.com.
Brilliant. Thank you for sharing your contact information. Have you got anything you want to say before we wrap up this episode?
Oh, so many things. I'm not special. I'm not. I'm a guy who got sick and didn't want to be. And everything that's come from that has come from the fact that I just wasn't willing to be sick. And I can't stress enough times, that's where this journey starts. The rest of it is just the dots and crosses and what to do. What to do is easy. The hard part is all up here. So start here and just be determined. You don't have to live this way. Other people have proven it before you. 2 of them are sitting right here. You can do it too.
Brilliant. Thank you for sharing that as well. Now we have come to the end of this episode, and I would like to express my sincere gratitude for our amazing guest, Belldon, for generously sharing his expertise, insights, and time with us today. I also want to thank all of you, our dedicated viewers and listeners, for being a part of this episode. If you need additional guidance and support, you can book a call with me at wellnessimpact.org. If you found today's episode insightful and valuable, I invite you to join our community of people committed to thriving with diabetes. To stay up to date for upcoming episodes, empowering discussions, and practical tips, make sure to subscribe and follow us. Once again, thank you, Belldon, for being our guest today. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on this impactful journey. Until next time, take care of your health and keep thriving.